Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react.
Welcome to Two Disabled Dudes podcast. As you can see, we are in person and on video for the first time. What do you think about this setup, Sean?
Like a legit setup. We've done in person before,
right?
But never in a studio.
Yeah, that's true.
We've been in hotel rooms, hotel lobbies,
right?
Back offices of theaters.
Guerrilla warfare of podcasting. Yeah,
this is amazing, and Mainline Studio is a great place to be. So if you're ever in the area, check it out.
Westchester, Pennsylvania. Sean, we've got a lot to get to. We've got a really great interview with Dr. Dave Lynch in a little bit, but there are a few things that I wanted to get to first. You are here in Pennsylvania. You flew all the way across country, and you're staying at my place. So we can save a little money. What do you think about that?
Actually, this is going to be hard to talk about. I'm going to need... Do we have a therapist waiting in the lobby? Maybe they could come in.
Oh, my gosh.
It's been great.
You've slept over 2 nights, and, I'm in my bedroom, and Sean is staying on the, fold-out couch in the living room. Not a big... place. My condo is 750 square feet, so we're basically staying in a hotel room together. And I wake up and I hear a voice. I'm like, what is that? And I have no idea what it's saying. But it's Sean talking in his sleep. I don't know. I don't even know what he's saying.
I don't even remember my dreams most of the time, so I couldn't even tell you what was going on.
Okay. All right. Well, you were sleeping. You must be well rested.
I would not say that.
Oh, all right. 2 more things I wanted to get to. One is that for the past few episodes, we've been talking about my new van and the driving test and the new license and all that stuff, right?
We've been talking about it for months, more than just a few episodes.
That's very true. Yeah, no, I've been trying to get this done for a year already. I passed my test last week.
Hey, I get a button for that. Congratulations, Scott.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I was talking about that I felt like a 16-year-old with my mom driving me to the test, but in fact, I was able to drive myself. My instructor agreed that would be the best, but, as we were preparing, I've been driving since I was 16.
But yes.
Yeah, and... I'm not young anymore, right? We're not, right? So I've been driving a long time, and all of a sudden, I'm in the car with a driving instructor who's telling me, oh, you're not going fast enough. Oh, what are you doing? You just crossed a solid white line. You need to stop before the line at the stop sign, before the stop sign. All this stuff. And obviously, she's just trying to help, because she just wants me to pass my test.
Sure.
But I'm just going, lady, I know how to drive. Shut up. So it was a success. Super awesome. Colette is the best. She was my driving instructor. And so we got it all done. And she put up with me. And it was great.
Nice. Congratulations. I wonder, though, because I feel like I'm getting whiplash being in the car with you. Is that a thing of the controls, the way they operate? Because, when you accelerate, sometimes it's pedal to the floor kind of level of acceleration. And I'm having some back issues, and I'm pretty sure Kyle's only making them worse.
Well, usually I only drive with myself.
Right.
So I really
you cross solid white lines. You don't stop early enough at stop signs, and you floor it when it's time to go.
Hey, man, all that matters is I was able to hold it together for the test, right?
That's all that matters.
All right. The next thing, Sean, is that Rare Disease Day, when this comes out, it will be I think it'll be 2 days till Rare Disease Day. I wanted to ask you what Rare Disease Day means to you.
To me, it's an opportunity to bring awareness to things we're all up against in the rare disease community. One thing I enjoyed about sitting down with Rob Long yesterday, he made a comment saying something to do with raising awareness, but also calling for action. Because, people knowing about it is one thing, people actually taking action is a whole nother thing. So I feel like Rare Disease Month, Rare Disease Day, as we all come together and raise awareness, we're actually also giving people opportunity to take action, to get involved, be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's one thing I love about Rare Disease Week, Rare Disease Day, the entire month, because you see all these different activities and opportunities for people to engage all over the world.
Yep. Yeah.
What about you? What does Rare Disease Day mean to you?
Well, I think, like you said, it's a day for us to take action, but also to just recognize how much support we actually do have within the community and outside the community as well from outside influences. Rare disease, like when we go and advocate on Capitol Hill, rare disease is not a partisan issue. And everyone's on board. It's just a matter of how do we figure out how to get it done. So it's a great thing to talk about and to push for because we realize that we have so much support. So that's one thing that I love about Rare Disease Day. Newsworthy from NORD, the National Organization of Rare Disorders, Light Up for Rare, comes to a monument near you. So Light Up for Rare is a program that they contact different monuments like the Empire State Building, the Eiffel Tower, different bridges, whatever, and they light up in rare disease colors for Rare Disease Day, and it's super cool. State capitals do this as well, and it's really neat to see those colors. They're very specific colors. You would recognize them. Anyone would recognize them, I feel like, if they've seen rare disease colors before. And it's a really neat program, once again, to recognize that we have support from, much more than just the rare disease community. For more information, you can go to rarediseases.org. That's a NORD website. You can contact a monument near you and see if you can get them to light up for Rare Disease Day. We're really excited about Light Up for Rare because it brings light to the rare disease community, and it is a story that is absolutely newsworthy. Sean, for our interview today, we've got Dr. Dave Lynch joining us. He's an incredible clinician and researcher, and he's a leader in our FA community. He's got a huge heart, and I think that really comes across in this interview. So enjoy our interview with Dave Lynch. All right, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We are here with our next guest. And guest, what should we call you?
How about Dave?
So, not Dr. Lynch, not Dr. Dave, not, Doc. Just
Dave is fine.
So what do your patients call you?
I suppose some of them still call me Dr. Lynch. Some people do call me Dr. Dave, but most of them just say Dave or other terms of endearment.
Hey, you.
Yeah, that usually works as well.
Dave, how long have you been working in FA? You're a clinician and a researcher at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. How long has it been for you there?
So it's February 2024 now, that means it's about 27 years, beginning in the spring of 1997.
Wow. And
I didn't have gray hair back then, for the record.
how many patients do you think you've seen over that time?
More than 700, probably less than 1,000 with FA, yes.
FA is a rare disease, 5,000 in the U.S., about 15,000 worldwide, and you have seen 1,000 of them.
Roughly 20% of the people in the United States over that period. That would be correct.
Since you see so many people, are there things that like totally surprise you very often?
I think at this point, there are still things that surprise you. People who present a little differently, people who have a few different issues, who say things a different way, people who change slower than you expected, and people who change faster than you expected. I mean, certainly the more people you see, the better the roadmap you have, and the better you are to decipher things. But I never cease being surprised, and those surprises are what a lot of what you learn from. What is the extra event which makes a person change slower? What is the extra event which makes a person change faster? And sometimes synergistic or oppositional diseases that coexist with FA can tell you a lot about things.
Where do you suppose grabbed your interest in the world of both seeing patients and also digging into research? Because I feel like those two aren't always commonly together in a doctor.
That's correct. I mean, in general, clinical medicine is quite far from research. They are not closely related. I'm by trade not a clinician. I'm a basic scientist by trade, not even a clinical researcher. I either did the smart thing or made the mistake of raising my hand at a meeting one time, and everything goes upstream or downstream from there. And clinical research and even clinical trials are a lot more like basic research than they are like clinical medicine. So that's why it is a relatively uncommon thing to do as much as I do of both at this point.
Yeah. And obviously at this point, we realize at some level you're drawn to both.
Yeah, I've always been drawn to both. If I had not wanted to see patients, I would have just gone through graduate school to be a PhD. If I had only wanted to see patients, I would have never gotten the PhD back when I was young, literally 40 years ago at this point. So you have to want to do both. I mean, we train people who are supposed to do both, but in fact, one takes over. Of the people in my MD PhD class from 1988 in my med school, Hopkins, only one of us continues to both see patients and do research. Huh. Wow. So, and that was a group of 12 individuals.
My goodness.
So there's only one left.
That one person is you?
That would be correct.
That's what I'm picking up on. Good deduction, Kyle. Man. Wow.
We're super sharp around here. Give us a scope for the people you see. Who's your youngest patient and who's your oldest patient, and kind of...
Maybe not who by name, because that's illegal. But maybe give us a reference of age.
So my oldest patient is right now 93. I see him less frequently now. He doesn't travel as much. My youngest patient is 3 at this moment.
Wow.
And just recently, we've been seeing more and more early diagnosed children, people who are symptomatic, but it's being caught earlier. Perhaps because of the release of Skyclarys, people now pay attention and know that there's potential treatment coming up, if not at diagnosis, but clinical trials in the near future after that, which creates a drive to diagnose younger and younger.
With your patient clientele, is it all FA?
At this moment in my career, apart from maybe 25 to 30 people with other ataxias whom are not new, I've been following them since around 2005 or so. Everyone else has FA at this point.
Can you answer that 93-year-old FA or something
FA.
else? Wow, that's incredibly inspiring.
Right.
For most that know the prognosis.
Remember that
normally go that way.
The earlier you present, the more severe the disease will be. The later you present, the less severe the disease will be. So while he's significantly affected, he is now 93 years old.
Wow.
And an active 93-year-old.
That's amazing. What is the symptom that gives your patients the most trouble, you think? What's the one that comes up the most?
So I think there are two ways to look at that. One is to just look at the name of the disease, Friedreich ataxia. Ataxia, walking, difficulty with balance and walking. And that's the one thing that everyone has in common, although it may be somewhat in the past tense for people as they progress. They may have gotten past purely balance and have other difficulties with their legs. But ataxia and walking comes up with everyone. But once you level the playing field there, then there are other things which I think people don't think as much about. Fatigue, and fatigue, and fatigue.
Yeah.
And then vision loss. Because those are the things which don't show up in the textbooks. And when people initially get diagnosed, those are two things which I don't think people mention at all. So when it comes up later, people don't realize it's part of the disorder.
Yeah, when I was diagnosed, I think a long time ago, right? In 1998 or something like that, everyone dismissed FA because it was a pediatric disease. And I was 17 years old. And what are some of the other things that cause a misdiagnosis? Because we know that people go 6-7 years either with a wrong diagnosis or no diagnosis, right? And so how does that happen?
So there are a variety of reasons why it takes so long to diagnose. And Ms. Farmer, your previous guest on this esteemed podcast, did a study with one of her genetic counselors a couple of years ago, which has never been published, but really as a good comment. People who present later actually take longer to diagnose. I think their mean was almost 10 years, whereas for children it was a little less than 2.5 years. That tells you something. The children are changing faster. It's the speed of change which tells you, hey, a disease is going on. You can't excuse this as a person just getting a little older. You can't excuse this in children as just normal coordination difficulty, a person being clumsy. It's that speed of progression which tells you that a disease is going on. So that's why you have actually a longer time to diagnosis from first symptoms in adults and later onset individuals as opposed to children. In addition, in adults, as you mentioned, adult neurologists don't think of FA as presenting in their age group, but it does. About 15% of people will show up after age 18. So yes, adult neurologists do need to know about it. And there is an issue there, but surprisingly, not every pediatric neurologist knows much about Friedreich ataxia because in their pediatric neurology training, they may never have met anyone.
Right.
Because it's not that common. They might have read about it, but know nothing about how it looks. There are a variety of things people can be misdiagnosed as. In adults, it's mainly multiple sclerosis, which looks very similar in the type of symptoms, but has a very different pathophysiology. Now, with the common use of MRI scans to diagnose MS, I think that's much less of a problem than it was 20 years ago. In children, the things that the misdiagnosis are what they call developmental coordination disorder, also known as being genetically clumsy. That is hard to differentiate from FA in the earliest stages of individuals, and you can't test everyone. You can't refer everyone to a pediatric neurologist because developmental coordination disorder might be 100 or more times more common than FA. So that's one place where we have to do better education. Some people are misdiagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth and a few other things, peripheral neuropathy, but I think with good education we can get around that. Yeah. But certainly we need to do a better job of diagnosing as soon as possible.
You mentioned the difference between like seeing somebody in person and reading about them in a textbook. What would you say are the main differences, or what's the advantage of seeing somebody in person rather than just reading about them? And you know, maybe that's an obvious question, but I kind of wanted to hear what you think.
It's not an obvious question. How can I explain this? There's simply something in medicine where you see someone in front of you And no matter what you read about doing the exam, it just makes more sense in front of you. And you're looking to explain everything in real time. So the person has lost reflexes. What could be causing that? Do they have ataxia with it? Do they have the appropriate amount of sensory information loss for this to be a neuropathy or for it to be Friedreich ataxia? So if you're seeing them in front of you, you're continuously trying to solve a puzzle. There is nothing like seeing a person in front of us. During the pandemic, we did a lot of video visits, and that's okay. It works out. But if a person has a new question, both my nurse practitioner, Kim Schott, and I agreed that we would have missed half of the new things going on if we hadn't seen people in front of us, if we were just listening to them describe them over the on a video. Seeing people is the only way to really know everything.
What, 2 or 3 years pandemic, how did that impact work for you? Did it have a long-term effect? You know, I guess we all know the impact, but what's the residual effect now that we're a year or two away from the height of the pandemic?
So in terms of the effect on patients, it was dramatic, as you all would know. People stopped doing anything, and there are certain people who really didn't leave their apartment much. They didn't go to the grocery store. They didn't do those little bits of exercise, which they did, and they missed their physical therapy, and they found themselves semi-permanently affected. It was hard to make up the lost ground from simple inactivity. Now we're a few years later, and I think things have come very much back to where they were. We know how to handle COVID. People come to see us now. We get to see the clinical trials in person. I think we learned a lot from it, and there are situations where if the insurance companies would let me, video visits would suffice. But I think we're back to very much the way we were. I do wish we would have held on to more video visits for the things that you can do by long distance, simple medication adjustments and things like that. That would have actually been a very good thing. But unfortunately, the state legislatures and insurance companies haven't held on to that.
Yeah. It's such a burden for so many patients to travel.
I think that's true. And one thing we have, the question is always, I think one thing by us being able to see people back more at advanced stages, by having through the natural history a little bit of funding to defray their cost of coming, by attempting to tell good jokes while they're there so they want to come back.
Good jokes?
Yeah, mediocre jokes. Or even by some of the process of sitting down to talk to people. We get more people back than I think we did before we had a natural history study.
Sure.
And I think we have learned things about individuals with more advanced FA that we did not know before. For example, vision loss. In the textbooks, it merits a line at most. I can tell you that for the people who present early, it is potentially a real issue as they go through their 30s and 40s. And vision is important. Duh.
Sure.
You know, you don't think about that as something. So we have learned a lot more. And as we do get better treatments, we're going to have to understand what the pre-treatment situation was like. So we understand how to view things as people get later on in the disease. As we do better, we'll have to know more and more about the later events in the disease.
You've mentioned a lot of symptoms, ataxia, vision loss. You may not have mentioned hearing loss, but the point is there's a lot of different things that go on with FA. And they all kind of culminate into sometimes, probably a lot of times, depression or anxiety or different things that don't necessarily manifest physically. And I think mental health, as we all know, is something that's coming into the forefront in the past few years. And how has that, mental health emerging as a top topic, how has that changed, if it has, you and your team's approach to an appointment?
So I think it's changed a lot. And because we have more individuals there and we have more projects ongoing, it can sometimes be a little chaotic, fun but chaotic coming to see us. And I intentionally bring up the mental health issues with everyone now. And then at the end of our clinical appointment, once I've gone over the clinical trials and things like that, I simply mention I'm stepping to the next room. And Kim Schott, our nurse practitioner, stays around for 5 or 10 minutes and talks to people about their mental health. And is there something that they will tell her that they won't tell me? And people don't like, even if I go by a first name, they still don't like telling their doctor these things.
Yeah.
In some ways because I'm a friend, in some ways because I'm a doctor, or sometimes just I'm this scary dude or something like that. But I think that is, and then if anything is going on, Kim will mention it to me, I'll step back in. And I think it has really been very helpful to do that and to be sure that everyone's being treated in their entirety. That those concerns are not too minor to bring up. They're treatable, either by behavioral approaches, lifestyle approaches, or by medications when appropriate.
You say you bring it up and ask people if it's an issue, or, bring it up somehow. And what would you say is maybe the percentage or the prevalence of that actually coming up as an issue in your patients?
At any given moment, 25%. Lifetime incidents in people, I think probably 50% or more go through with some mental issue over the course of their disease. And that number would be very similar to what you would find in other neurodegenerative diseases of this duration. Within Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease, depression is a part of the cognitive phenotype. That is less true in FA, but I think it is part of it. Even if that depression reflects what you mentioned before, what I'll call deafferentation, a fancy word for saying you don't see that well, you don't hear that well,
Right.
You don't sense that well with your. So what's happening in the world, who knows what a normal reaction actually is in that situation. I don't think I'm a person who can judge. I mean, there will be some things which are illusions, not delusions, but simply misperceptions of things that are going on. And that will impact people. And how they react is something which we need to try and understand and treat in an appropriate situation.
You are the world's expert in FA.
So they say.
So they say. You see more FA patients than anyone in the world. That's a lot to carry. You carry a lot, Dave. And I know you realize that. And how do you balance the weight of that with everything else in life? Does it give you, I don't know, how does Dave experience the weight of the community?
You used a word I don't know, balance. I mean, everyone have to have balance. Well, what do I do? Well, I ride bikes. I did all 4 ride ataxias last year.
That's right.
I attempted to ride 100 miles with you. You will recall I failed at 65, which is 1 mile more than the number of years I had at that moment. I do garden. I do take care of my dogs. I do have a family, and I cook. So I have lots of different things to do to step away. I might even sleep sometimes. Jeez. So, you have to do your best because otherwise you won't be focused. But, doing everything within one field and having trimmed away at this point many of the things which are harder to do makes it easier on me.
So focusing on FA has helped you focus, and
because otherwise I would be left as an unfocused individual, which most of you know I can be when I want.
Well, I can imagine too on the patient side, even if you were, say, all neurological disorders, I think going to what do you call them, primary care physician, they don't know anything that you need them to know. It's like, oh, you have a thing, go see a specialist. So there can be a lot of wasted energy or time, or, efforts aren't as strong as they could be when you have somebody who knows this one thing inside and out.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of advantages to it for the field. It works well for myself. It's not for everyone, and everyone should have a primary physician to follow the other things, because having FA does not keep you from getting all the other things in life. My apologies.
Yeah.
When a patient comes in and they're having a really tough time, they've lost all hope, their physical abilities are out the window, and they feel like there's nothing they can do about it, and they're really low. How do you approach that? What do you say to that person?
So if they use the words "no hope," that on my side, going back from Dave to Dr. Lynch, that demands an immediate discussion of mental health and where they are and the possibility for harming themselves when they use that phrase, and establishing whether they have a mental health professional involved at that moment. So those particular words, if they use that, are as serious as it gets. And we establish a plan before they leave clinic that day. So let's suppose instead you're just thinking about a person who's down. Then it's about assessing, do they have a mental health professional? Has anyone been working with them? Are they depressed, and do they have the vegetative symptoms of depression? Inability to eat, not so much inability to eat, failure to have any appetite, disordered sleep, excessive fatigue beyond that of FA, not wanting to do the single thing in life which they would enjoy most, so-called anhedonia is a fancy word that psychiatrists use. Those things that means you are clinically depressed, and we would talk about getting someone to a mental health professional, probably with use of medications. And then if those things don't, then we talk about getting life strategies and things like that, and psychologists involved, and whatever a person is receptive to. I think physicians have always been reticent to bring these things up. And some individuals, because of the stereotypes of society, are reticent to pursue mental health as equal to physical health. Both walls have to be broken down.
So the whole person can be treated like you said before.
Yeah.
And certain aspects.
There are still stereotypes within society, particularly for people of my age, not necessarily for younger individuals, about seeing therapists, about taking antidepressants. There shouldn't be. It's just another part of the disease. No difference in cardiomyopathy or hearing loss or vision loss or loss of coordination. It's just another part of the disease which has to be addressed.
While we've got you here, we got to ask you about the first treatment for FA. You've been in the FA community for a long time. You've been working your butt off for this. We got our first treatment almost a year ago. What have been the most gratifying things for you and your team, and what have been the most challenging things?
The most gratifying is, since it became available in people's mailbox around the 6th of July or something like that, and knowing that you start really seeing benefit several months out. So seeing people back in November and December and having them say, I can do something I wasn't doing before. The first 2 or 3 weeks where people were saying, I'm having this side effect that I haven't had before, where you haven't seen the benefit, was a little nerve-wracking. You're sort of like, what have we done? But then when you get to 6 months, I would say it looks very much like the clinical trial. A lot of people getting better, some people staying the same, a very few people not showing any benefit, and then trying to sort out why they didn't have any benefit. The challenging thing is starting a new drug in a population that has not seen a new drug before. And while OMAV doesn't have a lot of bad side effects, still having to monitor things and setting up the infrastructure and the time to do that on a large number of individuals is more challenging than I thought it would be. Even as accessible as we are, and how we use email and all sorts of other communication to keep track of things, 270 patients on OMAV is a lot of work. And we'll now come to the point where everyone has to realize, so now we've been for a year, everyone has to come back, and to keep getting it, they have to keep coming back every year, because that's part of standard of care for people who are on pharmacological agents. So that challenge is not yet finished, as we all have to get used to what it takes to monitor a drug long term. The fear is not the things we read about in the paper. The fear is the things we don't know anything about because we haven't given it to people for more than 5 years until this point. So we'll see.
So we arrived at this result of a new treatment through efforts of everyone in the community, clinicians such as yourself, basic scientists such as yourself, and advocacy organizations like FARA, industry partners, everyone, right? And I think oftentimes the patient feels like, oh, I should wait for a treatment. I'm just waiting for a treatment. I think that's a really flawed concept. And so what would you say from the clinician's perspective is the role of the patient in this whole process of getting a drug approved?
And the role is to participate, either in the clinical trials as they appear, and because FA patients have been so willing to participate, we recruit in a fraction of the time that other diseases take. People show up. If they're unable to participate in the clinical trial, either because of inclusion and exclusion criteria or because it doesn't mesh with their lifestyle, which is a fine reason not to participate, that's fine. Your goal is to live life, not to necessarily do trials. We'd hope we could make them come together. But if you're unable to do a clinical trial, doing a biomarker study, providing a sample of blood, coming in to be part of the natural history study, sharing your voice on what is important and what you find changes, because in the end, what the FDA asks us is they can look at our statistics on what we measured. Their question is, tell me how this makes a difference in the life of a patient. And if we cannot answer that question, then whatever we have done statistically and whatever we have measured will be deemed irrelevant, or not so much irrelevant, but an intermediate marker, which alone does not get you approval of a drug. Participate in any way you can. And there's so many different ways to do it. This is an exciting time. OMAV is a good drug. In some people, a very good drug, but it is not a cure. So that's why the rest of the pipeline has to roll on, and there have to be new things. And you have to find intelligent ways of combining them so that they don't counteract each other, and that so you can continue proving the new things work, because you do have to prove it. And that's a fair responsibility. So there are many more things to do. And I think it's important everyone remember that we're still around. We're still seeing people. The natural history study did not dissolve with the approval of OMAV. If anything, it has grown. So we still want people coming by. I will come up with new jokes. I promise.
All right. We need to get you a writer or something, I think.
That would work. I don't know how to write that into a grant. Joke writer. I just don't know. We'll see, though.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much.
Anytime,
we appreciate
Thank you
joining us and taking care of all of us in the FA community. So thanks so much.
Anytime, guys.
Thank you, Dave. You know, I hear you talk about Dave all the time, and I've met him, here and there, different events. I've never sat down and spent that much time with him, even though it was an hour or so, it went by fast. I appreciate Dave and everything he brings to the community at large. As we mentioned, he's kind of a big deal in our world of Friedreich's ataxia. So, Dave, we appreciate you joining us, and of course, being a part of everything we do, and being such a significant player for our own quality of life.
Yeah, I think, as you say, he's such a significant player, but he's so down to earth and unassuming, right? And approachable. And I think that's part of his magic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll wrap up this episode like we do every episode with a note of gratitude. Of course, we believe in the power of gratitude and making it a point to express a thank you. Every episode is a part of what we do here. So, Kyle, who's your thank you note going to today?
My thank you note goes out to my cleaning service, Raina and her crew. And, you know, you were coming to my place and it was a mess.
Oh, I believe it. I have zero doubt. It's still a mess. Thank you, Raina. You did great, but it's still a mess.
The point, though, is that, you know, for you and I, for anybody with that day, making the bed, it's like the hardest thing, right?
Sure.
And so she texted me on Friday night and was like, hey, I can come tomorrow if you want. And I'm like, yes, please. So I pulled out all the stuff to make the bed, and they did it when they got there, and it was really nice. And obviously they did a lot of other stuff too, but that was the key for me. And so thank you to Raina and her service for cleaning up my place so I can have guests sometimes.
Awesome. Thank you, Raina. I appreciate it. I feel like I'm benefiting for sure. I'm going to say thank you to some random strangers. This trip is the first one I've taken using my wheelchair without somebody traveling with me. So it's different. You can't roll your own suitcase while also manually pushing your chair, right? So a little bit different. However, I've had some amazing people just walk over and offer help at different times. So I'm saying thank you to a few of those strangers. I do feel like most of those strangers were not in California. So something to say about folks in Missouri and folks in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I think something about this side of the world where people are just maybe a little bit more attentive.
Conscious.
I don't even want to say nicer or not nice.
Right.
I think it's a matter of awareness and being, well, we see it all the time in New York, maybe California, Los Angeles. We're just all self-absorbed, and we don't even notice somebody's behind you and in a chair, so there's no reason to open the door.
Right.
And I feel like people outside of those bigger cities are a little more conscious, like you said, aware. So I appreciate all the help that I received to get here successfully.
Yeah. Travel is not easy, and especially with a disability. And so all those little things, sometimes not even little things, right, that help are going to get us through the day.
Yep. So thank you, of course, for tuning in today and being a part of what we do here at the Two Disabled Dudes and here at the Mainline Studios. We appreciate you listening. Of course, we encourage you to check out our show notes at twodisableddudes.com, where you can find more information on some of the things we talked about today. Of course, always, you have the opportunity to rate and review. We ask you to take a minute and do that. You can find us on any of your favorite podcast apps. We look forward to talking at you again next week. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.